When I did my channel update, I talked a little about the styles of video I do and would like to do, but didn't say a whole lot about it because I figured I'd better just do a whole video about it. Well, welcome to that video. Currently, I mainly make three styles of video: point of views, travelogues, and soapboxes. We'll start with POVs since they're the simplest. I just take the raw footage I have from my helmet cam, sync it up with the out of the wind audio source, and then chop it up into 10-ish minute segments and add stuff like titles and outro. Sometimes I also blur out the speedometer, mainly when I'm riding with others. I kind of like the immersive nature of them, kind of ASMR like, where you can just lose yourself in the video for 10 minutes. Or, if you don't care to pay attention, you can just have it on while doing something else, making motorbike noises at you that just thrum in your peripheral consciousness without needing to take up your attention. Now, these videos aren't really all that popular, even when established channels do them. I think my average viewership is about 1. I did know this when I started with them, but I had a lot of raw footage. They're easy to make, and from YouTube's perspective, my channel is pretty active with 4 videos a week. I'll be continuing to put them out until I finish the NC500 footage, and then I think I'll review whether to keep on doing them. Next, we have travelogues. These are kind of a mix of helmet cam footage, little vignettes I recorded for Twitter, and whatever photos I happen to have taken. I never really intended to form them into a coherent narrative, but I was bored in lockdown like everyone else, and they felt like a natural combo, especially to preserve my love of travel when I couldn't. I still basically produce travelogue content in the same way, and consequently, it can vary in quality. A good example is the last episode of the German summer travelogue, which was pretty unbalanced. One thing I should be doing is syncing audio for it, but that can be an awkward and annoying process at times. The NC500 had music dubbed over it just to get around the awful helmet cam audio, though the European tour and German summer had a muff on the helmet cam to reduce wind noise. These get a bit more attention simply because they're more interesting than the POVs, and I'd like to do more of them, perhaps with a bit better structure. Then there are soapboxes, which are presented as this video is, old footage that I've stripped the audio off and dubbed me reading a script over. They seem to get a reasonably consistent audience, which is pretty nice, and I like doing them, but they do take the most effort because I need to come up with ideas and write a script and then record it. The actual editing is pretty simple. Another thing is I need to actually be able to talk at reasonable length about the subject, and I prefer to talk about things that are less topical and more evergreen. I also do think my delivery could be better. I'm still trying to find that balance between slowing down for subtitles and not sounding like a robot. Lastly, there's a sort of misc category where sometimes I'll just do something a bit different. Both of the Rebel videos, the VFR video, the Decibels review, sometimes it fits the subject more to sort of branch out. Incidentally, that test ride review I did for the Rebel is my most watched video at time of writing. There's also subject matter to consider. Obviously, this matters more for soapboxes than anything else. I mainly just cover whatever subject I want to talk about. I don't really feel like they need to be tied down to a particular field, as long as it's something I can actually speak coherently and knowledgeably about. I've done a few on furry topics and the fandom's relationship with sex, capital, and mainstream culture, and I'm sure that's not the last word I'll have on any of those. Obviously, I've been riding bikes for nearly 2 decades, and I guess I have things to say about that. I did say I'm going to end up making some videos about the electric experience, and looking at my schedule, there's 1 or 2 of those to come. The very first of my soapboxes was about social media stuff, and although Wuniverse has kind of fallen by the wayside, that experience has left me with many opinions. Outside of soapboxes, my content is mainly motorbikes and travel. I did sneak a fursuiting video in once, and I can't guarantee that won't happen again, but later in this video, I'm going to talk about why I don't do much of that. So what different videos could I be making? Well, there are two things that come to mind. The first is motovlogs, which you'll have seen me do one of recently. That's basically talking as I'm riding along on the bike, rather than voiceovers in post like this video. There's lots of different stuff you can do with motovlogging because, after all, there's lots of different stuff you can talk about. The thing I particularly like, though, is enhancing travelogues with some commentary while I'm riding, which seems to be a popular style that works quite nicely. I think the format also works for some of the more bike-focused topics, perhaps better than other topics. To that end, I improved my auto recording setup to make it something I can actually get some good audio from. My main concern about that kind of video is that, as we've seen, I'm not very good off script. That's something I could improve though, and I think it's worth improving on if I want to make good videos. The other thing that comes to mind is more off-bike stuff. This is actually a very different prospect, and I'm going to talk about it in depth in a minute, but I find this kind of content harder to make. The big issue is that on-bike content is generated by doing something I'm doing anyway. Even motovlogging is basically me just talking to myself while I ride, which is hardly flow breaking. The little vlog segments in my travelogues are usually just me whipping out my smartphone and dropping an update on Twitter, so even they are basically an inline thing I was doing anyway. Stopping to fly a drone or take pics of the bike or make a video segment or something is a break in the flow of something that I do to get out and satisfy my wanderlust, rather than as a video making chore. This is kind of why I considered doing an MFF travelogue and even recorded a couple of vlogs and then gave up. I wasn't there to make content, I was there to enjoy myself. Since that makes a nice segue into making content, I guess I'll talk about it now. This isn't my job, and looking at my finances, it's probably never going to be, so I do it in my spare time and share the enthusiasm for that with you guys. To that end, making content takes a backseat to me just enjoying the things that I do. Otherwise, I'd plan shorter legs, stay in more hotels, and stop at more scenic spots for a few beauty shots or do a bit of a B-roll and contrived speechless wow. And to be honest, not doing those things is a much more authentic representation of how motorbike trips really go anyway. It does limit my scope a little, but given that means you see less furry stuff on here, maybe a few of you don't mind so much. One of the reasons I opted to improve my motovlogging setup is just to make it easier for me to record more engaging content in-stream, as it were, without having to stop and get my phone out to give you a reaction. This is especially important for group rides, where I don't want to be holding everyone up because the YouTuber wants to faff about. That's actually really important to me. There's a whole other side to some of the tours that I do that you guys don't see. A special side, a social side, camaraderie, camping, bonfires, barbecues, even a failed romantic adventure, but the moment I pull out a camera and try to record any of that, the magic is lost. And the last thing I want to do is be that kind of YouTuber. The kind that only fanboys hang out with so they can be on camera with daddy, ooh. This is another reason I don't really record stuff at FurryCons. They're very social events for me. So, if I don't want to interrupt the flow of my hobby, but I do want to improve the quality of the videos that work with it, what can I do? I think the answer here is to explore some alternatives. Adding more motovlogging is going to be a great way to improve my travelogues. Getting more consistent about normal vlogs and videoing some of the boring bits will help to improve them structurally, as will making more of an effort to travelogue solo adventures where I don't feel like I'm being a bother. I can also work on sharing more motorbike focused topics as motovlogs rather than in the same format as soapboxes. There are also some equipment changes I can do. The helmet mic cable is still a bit of a faff and I fully remove it for normal riding. I might be able to splice a locking jack and socket into it just below the helmet rim so it's less of a nuisance and I don't need to constantly mount it, unmount it. Swapping the bar-mounted GoPro for another F2BT would reduce the memory card and battery logistics. This gives me less viewpoints for more advanced editing, but it produces a lame viewpoint anyway. Liberating it to be a dedicated video device would allow me to maybe mount it somewhere more creative. I'd also like to get a 360 cam. They're not unreasonably expensive, but I'm currently buying a house, so not just yet. That might also mean roping in my work laptop to video editing work though, as I don't think my PC can handle the 360's post-processing. Speaking of my PC, did you know it's 13 years old with an original Nehalem Core i7-920? For reals, I built this thing in January 09 from parts ordered at the end of 08. Of course, it's all SSD these days, and the graphics card is a comparatively bleeding edge 9 years old, all of which makes video editing sometimes frustrating. Inability to scrub is a particularly pain. I should have upgraded it, but again, house, priorities, that'll come, I'm sure. The last little bit of tech I could stand to improve would be the mic I record all these on. It's actually just a lavalier clipped onto a cardboard stand on my desk with the script on screen behind it. I think you can probably hear that in this audio, but I had the mic already and it made sense to use it. That's probably an easy one to change once all the house stuff gets sorted out. Well, I hope that was illuminating. More than my other videos, I'd really appreciate comments in this one, as all of this pertains to making my videos better. Don't forget, as ever, to like the video. If you're new here, then wow, not the most amazing place to start, but go check out some of my other videos and maybe consider subscribing if you like them. Hit up the Ko-fi link in the description below to help me buy better equipment, and hit the bell if you like notifications.